The message came from the dying stars. It traveled across the cold emptiness of space for 300 years before it reached Earth. When the signal finally arrived, it was weak and broken, but the words were clear enough to make every person who heard them stop breathing. To anyone who can hear us, we are dying, the darkness is coming. Please send help. Send warriors, send anyone, we are begging you. The voice belonged to Ambassador of a race of beings made of pure light. They had lived for millions of years. They had built cities that floated among the clouds of gas giants. They had mapped every corner of the known universe, and now they were screaming for help like frightened children. In the great halls of the Galactic Council, 12 ancient species gathered to discuss the message. These were the oldest and most powerful civilizations in existence. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched stars being born and dying. They believed they knew everything worth knowing. The tall beings with skin like polished metal spoke first. Their leader, Admiral, stood before the council with cold eyes that showed no emotion. "The mathematics are clear," he said. "The void swarm cannot be stopped. It has consumed 17 star systems in the last cycle alone. Fighting it would be a waste of resources. We must hide and preserve what we can." The creatures who existed partly in this dimension and partly in another agreed. "Our duty is to protect knowledge. We will retreat to our hidden libraries and wait for the darkness to pass." The ancient warriors who had not fought a real war in 10,000 years bowed their heads. "It is fate. We must accept our ending with grace and dignity." One by one, each species found a reason to do nothing. They were too old, too wise, too afraid. They dressed their fear in beautiful words and called it philosophy. On the other side of the galaxy, a small blue planet received the same message. Earth was young. Humans had only discovered faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. They were still learning how to walk among the stars. Compared to the ancient races, they were like babies taking their first steps. The message played on every screen on the planet. People stopped in the streets to listen. Mothers held their children close. Old soldiers felt something stir in their hearts. And in the headquarters of Earth's United Defense Council, the admirals argued about what to do. "We cannot get involved," said Admiral, a tired old man who had seen too many wars. "We are not strong enough. We have one experimental deep space cruiser. One, against a threat that has destroyed entire civilizations." The other admirals nodded. It was the logical choice, the safe choice, the choice that would keep humanity hidden and protected. Then a woman stood up. Her name was Park, and she was the captain of the Defiance, Earth's first and only deep space cruiser. She was not tall. She was not physically impressive, but when she spoke, everyone listened. "I lost my family in the Mars Colony War," she said quietly. "My mother, my father, my little brother. I was 17 years old when I buried them, and I swore that day that I would never let anyone else suffer alone if I could help them." She looked around the room at the faces of the admirals. Some were angry, some were confused, some were afraid. "I heard that message," continued. "I heard beings who have lived for millions of years crying like scared children in the dark. They are calling for heroes. They are calling for anyone brave enough to stand with them." Admiral shook his head. "Captain Park, be reasonable. We cannot win this fight. We would be throwing away lives for nothing." Smiled, but there was no happiness in it. Only a fierce determination that burned like fire. "Maybe you are right," she said. "Maybe we cannot win. Maybe we will all die. But I would rather die fighting than live knowing I let others suffer because I was afraid. They are asking for help, Admiral. If we do not answer, what was the point of reaching the stars? What was the point of anything?" The room was silent. On the Defiance, a young man named sat in the tactical center and stared at the star maps on his screen. He was the ship's tactical officer, responsible for weapons and combat strategies. He was brilliant at his job. Everyone said so. But Brilliance had not saved Mars colony 73 years ago. Brilliance had not saved the 200 people who died while he watched helplessly from orbit. The ghost of that failure followed him everywhere. It whispered to him in the quiet moments. It told him he was not good enough, not fast enough, not brave enough. When he heard the alien message, something changed inside him. Here was a chance to make things right. Here was a chance to save people instead of watching them die. He walked to Captain Park's quarters and knocked on the door. "I want to go," he said when she opened it. "Whatever happens, I want to be there." Looked at him for a long moment. She saw the pain in his eyes. She recognized it because she carried the same pain in her own heart. "We might not come back," she warned him. "I know. The odds are against us." "They always are." Nodded slowly. "Get the crew ready. We leave in 6 hours." In the science lab, Doctor was already packing her equipment. She was a scientist who studied alien life. She had spent her whole career dreaming of meeting beings from other worlds. Now that dream was about to come true, even if it meant flying into the mouth of death itself. Her hands shook as she worked, but not from fear. It was excitement, pure, wild excitement. The universe was so much bigger and stranger than anyone had imagined, and she was going to see it firsthand. In the engineering bay, ran her hands over the Defiance's engine core. She had built half of this ship with her own hands. She knew every wire, every circuit, every bolt. The admirals said the ship was not ready for deep space combat. Disagreed. Her ship was ready. She had made sure of it. And in the Marine barracks, Sergeant Hand gathered his soldiers. They were young. Most of them had never seen real combat. But when he told them where they were going and why, not a single one backed away. "We might die out there," said, "but we will die for something that matters. We will die as heroes." The soldiers cheered. 6 hours later, the Defiance launched into the darkness between stars. It was one small ship carrying 200 humans toward a threat that had terrified ancient civilizations. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among billions. Ahead of them, the universe waited to see what these strange, young, stubborn creatures would do. The Galactic Council had calculated that resistance was futile. They had forgotten to calculate humanity. The Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered a graveyard. Stood on the bridge and stared at the destruction before her. Broken ships floated everywhere, spinning slowly in the empty silence of space. Some were cut in half. Others looked like something had taken bites out of them. Metal that had once been beautiful was now twisted and burned. Below them, the planet Prime was dying. Great cities that had stood for 1,000,000 years were on fire. The light that had always covered the world like a golden blanket was fading, growing dim and weak. "Dear God," whispered from his station. His face was pale. "How many died here?" Doctor checked her instruments with trembling hands. "Billions. The planet had a population of 12 billion. Now I am detecting fewer than 3,000 life signs. 3,000 survivors, out of 12 billion. Gripped the armrest of her captain's chair so hard her knuckles turned white. She had known the situation was bad. She had not known it was this bad. "Find the survivors," she ordered. "We are getting them out of there." The Defiance descended through clouds of smoke and ash. The landing was rough because the ship was not designed for planetary entry. Cursed from the engineering bay as warning lights flashed across her screens. But she kept the ship flying. She always did. They found the survivors in an underground shelter beneath what used to be a temple. There were beautiful creatures, even in their dying state. Their bodies were made of light, shaped like tall, thin humans with features that shifted like flames. But the light was fading. Their golden glow had become a weak yellow, and some had turned almost gray. Their leader came forward to meet. Her name was Elder, and she had lived for 300,000 years. She had seen the birth of new stars. She had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations. She was ancient beyond human understanding. And she was crying. "You came," whispered. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "We sent our message to every corner of the galaxy. We begged the ancient races for help. We pleaded with the Galactic Council. No one answered. No one came." She looked at with eyes that held the weight of ages. "But you came. You who are so young. You who have only walked among the stars for a moment. Why would you throw away your existence for strangers?" Did not hesitate, because you asked. Stared at her for a long moment. Then she did something that had not done in 10,000 years. She laughed. It was a broken, sad sound, but there was wonder in it too. "Your species is very strange," she said. "We get that a lot." Over the next few days, the Defiance became a refugee ship. 3,000 crowded into spaces that were designed for 200 humans. It was uncomfortable. It was dangerous. No one complained. Doctor spent every waking hour studying and learning about their enemy. What she discovered terrified her. The Void Swarm was not an army. It was not a fleet of ships or a race of aliens. It was something far worse. It was entropy given form. It was the death of light itself. It moved through space like a living shadow, consuming everything in its path. Stars, planets, ships, people. Nothing could escape it. Nothing could fight it. "The ancient races ran simulations for thousands of years," explained. "They calculated every possible scenario, every battle strategy, every weapon. Nothing works. The Void Swarm absorbs energy. The more you attack it, the stronger it becomes." "So everyone just gave up?" asked. There was anger in his voice. "Billions of years of civilization, and they all just decided to die quietly." They decided that fighting was illogical. Resistance would only cause more suffering. "That is the thing I have ever heard." Smiled sadly. "Perhaps, or perhaps they have simply forgotten what it means to hope." But was not listening to the conversation. She was staring at her instruments with wide eyes. Her hands were shaking again, but this time it was from excitement. "Captain," she said slowly, "I think I found something." She had been scanning the Void Swarm energy readings from the Battle of Prime. The swarm left traces everywhere it went, like fingerprints at a crime scene, and had noticed something strange in those fingerprints. "The Void Swarm reacts differently to different energy signatures," she explained. "It absorbs most energy without any problem. Light, heat, radiation, everything. But look at this." She pointed to a spike in the readings. This happened when they were fighting back, when they were most emotional, most desperate. The swarm actually pulled back for a moment. Leaned forward. "That is impossible. We analyzed every weapon, every—" "Not weapons," interrupted. "Emotions, raw emotional energy. The swarm reacted to your feelings, not your weapons." The bridge was silent. "Humans produce a lot of emotional energy," continued. "More than most species. We feel things deeply. Anger, love, fear, hope. Our brains are constantly producing electromagnetic waves connected to our emotions." She looked at, "I think that is why the ancient races cannot fight the Void Swarm. They suppressed their emotions millions of years ago. They became logical, cold, calculating. But we never did. We are still messy and passionate and emotional." "You think our feelings can hurt that thing?" asked. He had been standing quietly in the corner listening. "I think our feelings might be the only thing that can." Was already moving. "If you can give me the frequency data, I can build an amplifier. We can broadcast human emotional signatures through the ship systems." "It has never been tested," warned. "I do not even know if it will work." Stood up, "Then we tested." The test came sooner than anyone expected. A Void Swarm tendril had been following the refugee convoy. It was smaller than the main swarm, but still large enough to swallow a dozen ships whole. It found them 3 days after they left Prime. The darkness came out of nowhere. One moment the stars were bright and clear. The next moment, Half of them disappeared behind a wall of absolute black. "All hands to battle stations," ordered. Her voice was calm even though her heart was pounding. "Is the amplifier ready?" "As ready as it will ever be." "Get your Marines suited up. If this does not work, we are going to have to fight that thing the old-fashioned way." "Yes, Captain." The Void Swarm reached for the refugee ships with tendrils of darkness. The ships tried to run, but they were too slow, too weak. One by one, they began to disappear into the black. The Defiance flew straight at the swarm. "Turn on the amplifier," commanded. "Flip the switch." Nothing visible happened, but something invisible spread out from the Defiance like ripples in a pond. It was the combined emotional energy of 200 humans who were angry, afraid, hopeful, and determined all at once. The Void Swarm touched the edge of the wave and screamed. It was not a sound that could be heard with ears. It was a sound that echoed inside the mind, a sound of pain and confusion and something that might have been fear. The tendrils of darkness pulled back. The wall of black retreated. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Void Swarm ran away. On the bridge, no one moved. No one spoke. They all stared at the empty space where the swarm had been moments before. Then started laughing. It was a wild, amazed sound. "Did we just scare that thing?" he asked. "Did we actually just scare the monster that destroyed entire civilizations?" Elder was crying again, but this time there was no sadness in her tears, only wonder, only hope. "You impossible creatures," she whispered, "what are you?" Smiled. For the first time since they left Earth, she allowed herself to feel something like hope. "We are human," she said, "and we are just getting started." News spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On every planet, on every station, on every ship, people heard the same unbelievable story. A single human vessel had faced the Void Swarm and survived. Not just survived, it had made the swarm retreat. In the dark corners of the galaxy, species who had accepted their death began to whisper. On the hidden worlds where civilizations waited to be consumed, hope flickered to life for the first time in centuries. And on Nexus Station, the heart of the Galactic Council, the ancient leaders were not happy. Admiral of the summon to the council chamber. The chamber was massive, built to make visitors feel small and powerless. 12 thrones rose in a circle, each one holding a representative of the oldest species in existence. Light filtered down from a crystal ceiling that showed the stars beyond. Walked into the chamber alone. She wore her simple human uniform. She carried no weapons. She was surrounded by beings who had ruled the galaxy for longer than humanity had existed. She was not afraid. "Captain Park of Earth," announced. His metallic voice echoed through the chamber. "You have disrupted the natural order of things. You have interfered with matters beyond your understanding." "I saved 3,000, replied. "Was I supposed to let them die?" "Yes." The word was cold and simple. "The Void Swarm is inevitable. By resisting, you only extend the suffering. Better to accept the end with dignity than to struggle uselessly against fate." Looked around at the 12 ancient beings. They were powerful, they were wise. They had lived for millions of years, and they had given up. "You call it the natural order?" she asked. "I call it cowardice." The chamber went silent. No one had spoken to the council like this in 10,000 years. "You sit here on your thrones and talk about fate and dignity," continued. Her voice was steady, but there was fire in her eyes. "But I have seen what the Void Swarm leaves behind. I have walked through the ashes of Prime. I have looked into the eyes of beings who watched their entire civilization die while the galaxy did nothing." She pointed at, "You have lived so long that you have forgotten why living matters. You calculate and philosophize and accept, but you do not fight. You do not hope. You do not love anything enough to rage against the dying of the light." "Emotion is weakness," said. "Logic is strength. Logic told you to hide while billions died. Logic told you that fighting was useless. Logic was wrong, stepped forward. We hurt the void swarm. One small human ship made it retreat, not with superior weapons, not with ancient technology, with our emotions, with our feelings, with the very things you threw away millions of years ago. She let that sink in. Maybe we will lose, she admitted. Maybe the void swarm will consume everything in the end, but I would rather die fighting for something I love than live forever as a coward, and I think there are others who feel the same way. In the shadows of the chamber, something stirred. Voices began to murmur. Not all of the council members looked at with hostility. Some looked at her with something else, something that might have been hope. A young stepped out of the crowd. He was different from. His metal skin was darker, newer. He had not yet learned to suppress his feelings completely. I want to join them, he said. His voice trembled. I have run the calculations. The probability of victory is almost zero, but I do not want to spend my final moments hiding. I want to fight. Stared at him with cold eyes. You would betray your own kind. I would rather betray logic than betray my soul. More voices spoke up. A warrior stepped forward, her ancient armor gleaming. We were once a proud people. We have forgotten what pride feels like. I wish to remember. A scholar, half visible in this dimension, flickered into full view. Knowledge is worthless if there is no one left to know it. I will help preserve the galaxy, not just its records. One by one, beings from across the galaxy stepped forward. They were young and old. They were warriors and scientists and artists. They came from species that had been enemies but in this moment they were united. Admiral watched it all with growing anger. This is madness. You are all going to die for nothing. Perhaps, said Elder, the leader had been given a seat at the edge of the chamber. Her light was still weak but growing stronger. But as the humans would say, it is our madness to choose. The council chamber erupted into chaos. Back on the Defiance, the crew was preparing for war. Lieutenant worked around the clock with Doctor. They had named their weapon the Protocol. It was a way to amplify human emotional resonance and focus it into a concentrated beam. In theory, it could do more than just scare the void swarm. It could actually wound it. The problem is power, explained to. Human emotions are strong, but the void swarm is vast. We need more than one ship. We need a whole fleet of ships, all broadcasting emotional energy at the same time. We are getting a fleet, said. More ships join us every day. And it was true. The coalition of the Defiant, as people had started calling it, was growing. Mismatched vessels from a dozen species arrived at their meeting point. Some were military ships. Some were converted cargo vessels. Some were personal yachts owned by wealthy aliens who had decided they would rather fight than flee. Engineer had made an important discovery. When she combined human technology with light crystals, the result was something neither species could have created alone. The power output increased by a factor of 10. Suddenly, even small ships could carry weapons. It is like your species was designed to fight this enemy, said in wonder. Everything about you, your emotions, your stubbornness, your refusal to accept defeat, it all fits together like pieces of a puzzle. Maybe the universe knew we would be needed someday, suggested. The universe does not plan ahead, the universe just is. Then maybe we are just lucky. Smiled. She had learned how to smile from watching the humans. It was a strange expression for a being of light, but she was getting better at it. I do not believe in luck anymore. I believe in you. Meanwhile, Sergeant was training the alien volunteers. It was not easy. They were made of light and had never held a physical weapon. They were strong but slow. They were excellent warriors but had forgotten how to work as a team. And all of them had forgotten how to feel. Anger shouted at a group of trainees. I need to see anger. The void swarm feeds on calm and logic. It fears passion, so show me some passion. They looked at each other uncertainly. Think about what you have lost, continued. Think about your homes, your families, your friends. Think about everything the swarm has taken from you. Now tell me how that makes you feel." Slowly something changed in the eyes. Their calm expressions cracked. Their hands tightened on their weapons. And for the first time in 10,000 years, they roared with genuine rage. "There it is," said with a grin. "That is what we are fighting with. That is what will save us all." The Galactic Council officially declared the coalition to be traitors. Admiral threatened to destroy any ship that joined the human cause, but the threats were empty. The Council's fleets were designed for defense, not attack. They did not have the will to fight anyone, not even traitors. And every day, more ships arrived. The coalition grew from dozens to hundreds to thousands. Species that had never worked together found common ground in their desire to survive. Ancient enemies stood side by side, united by hope. Watched her strange fleet from the bridge of the Defiance. These were not professional soldiers. They were desperate people who had chosen to fight rather than surrender. They were scared and untrained and outmatched. They were exactly what the galaxy needed. "The Void Swarm's main body has been located," reported. "It is moving toward the galactic core. If it reaches Nexus Station, it will have access to the central power grid. That much energy would make it unstoppable." "How long do we have?" 3 weeks, maybe less." Nodded slowly. 3 weeks to prepare an army of misfits to face an enemy that had destroyed civilizations. It was impossible. But then again, so was everything they had done so far. "Send a message to all coalition ships," she ordered. "We attack in 2 weeks. Tell them to prepare for the fight of their lives." Hesitated. "Captain, many of these ships are not ready. Many of these people have never fought before." "Then they will learn." Turned to face him. "The Void Swarm is counting on us to be logical. It is counting on us to calculate the odds and realize we cannot win. It has never faced an enemy stupid enough to fight anyway." She smiled grimly. Time to be stupid. Void Swarm filled the sky. Had seen recordings of the swarm before. She had studied the data. She thought she understood how big it was. She was wrong. The main body of the Void Swarm was larger than a solar system. It blotted out entire star clusters as it moved. Looking at it was like staring into the end of everything. A wall of absolute darkness that swallowed light and hope and life itself. "I think I am going to be sick," muttered. "No time for that," replied, but her own hands were shaking. "What is our status?" The coalition fleet had gathered at the threshold, a narrow passage between 2 neutron stars. It was the only place where the swarm's approach could be funneled into if they could stop it here, they might have a chance. If they failed, the path to the galactic core would be wide open. 4,000 ships hung in formation. They were a patchwork fleet, held together by desperation and hope. Light vessels floated beside human cruisers. Warships shared space with battle barges. It was the largest combined force in galactic history. It looked tiny compared to the darkness ahead. "All ships are in position," reported from engineering. "Weapons are charged and ready, but Captain, there is a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The swarm is too big. Even if every ship fires at once, we cannot hurt the main body enough to stop it. We need to hit its core directly, and for that, someone has to fly into the center carrying a concentrated device." The bridge went silent. "That would be a suicide mission," said quietly. "The person who carries the device would never come out." "I know," his voice was heavy. "I have built the device. It is ready. I just need someone to deliver it." Closed her eyes. She had known this moment was coming. She had hoped for another way, but there was no other way. There never was. "I will do it," she said. "No," the voice came from behind her, stepped forward, his face pale but determined. "I will go. I have already volunteered." Dead? 3 years ago, I watched 200 people die because I was not fast enough. I have been carrying that guilt ever since. Let me do this, Captain. Let me save people for once instead of watching them die." Stared at him. She saw the pain in his eyes. She saw the desperate need for redemption. She understood it because she felt the same thing every day. Before she could respond, stepped onto the bridge. Behind him were 30 soldiers, both human and alien. "We have all volunteered," said simply. "Every person in this room is ready to make the run. You will have to fight us to stop us." Looked at their faces, young and old, human and alien. They had all chosen to die so that others might live. "We will decide after the battle," she said finally. "Right now, we have a war to fight." The night before the battle, no one slept. Walked through the ship, visiting every section. She learned names she had never known. She heard stories she had never heard. A young told her about his daughter back home. A warrior shared memories of a war fought 10,000 years ago. A human engineer talked about the garden she wanted to plant when this was all over. None of them expected to survive. All of them had chosen to fight anyway. In the medical bay, found sitting with Elder. There was glowing brighter now, her light returning as hope filled her ancient heart. "Your species is strange," said when approached. "You know you will die and you fight anyway. You know you will lose loved ones and you love anyway. It is terrifying and beautiful at the same time." "We call it being human," said. "Is it worth it, all the pain, all the loss?" Thought about her family, her mother's smile, her father's laugh, her brother's endless questions. They were gone, but the love remained. It would always remain. "Yes," she said, "it is worth it." Dawn came. There was no sun at the threshold, but the fleet knew it was time. The void swarm had stopped advancing. It hung at the edge of the passage like a predator studying its prey. Stood on the bridge and looked at her crew. These people had become her family over the past months. Whatever happened today, she would never forget them. "All ships, this is Captain Park of the Defiance. Today we fight for everyone who cannot fight for themselves. Today we stand against the darkness. We may not win. We may not survive. But the galaxy will remember that when it cried for heroes, we answered." She took a deep breath. "All ships attack." The battle began. The coalition fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. Beams cut into the void swarm like knives into shadow. The swarm screamed, that terrible silent scream that echoed in every mind. For a moment, it actually retreated. Then it fought back. Tendrils of darkness lashed out, faster than anyone expected. Ships disappeared, swallowed whole by the black. The coalition formation broke apart as vessels tried to dodge the reaching fingers of death. "Hold the line," shouted. "Keep broadcasting, do not let fear take over." It was a losing battle. For every tendril they pushed back, 2 more appeared. The void swarm was simply too vast, too powerful. Ships were dying by the hundreds. But they kept fighting. A light vessel flew directly into a tendril, sacrificing itself to save 3 transports behind it. A warship rammed into the swarm's edge, its crew screaming defiance as they were consumed. Human, alien, it did not matter. They all fought with everything they had. "The device is ready," reported. Her voice was breaking. "We need to launch now or it will be too late." "Who is taking it?" asked. Before anyone could answer, was moving. He grabbed the device from its housing and ran toward the shuttle bay. Shouted. "No time to argue, Captain." His voice came back over the comm. "Just make sure this was worth it." The Marines tried to follow him, but he had locked the shuttle bay doors. He climbed into an auxiliary craft, a small ship barely big enough for 1 person and a bomb. "Tell my sister I am sorry I missed her wedding," said as he launched. "Tell Earth we never forgot where we came from." His small ship shot toward the heart of the darkness. The void swarm noticed. Tendrils reached for him. He dodged the first one, the second one. The third one grazed his hull, but he kept going. "You do not have to do this," pleaded over the comm. "Yes, I do. Someone has to. Today it is me." The small ship penetrated the outer layer of the swarm. The darkness closed around it like a fist. Its final transmission was picked up by every ship in the fleet. Tell the universe we were here. Tell them that when the darkness came, humanity did not run. Tell them. Static. Then light. The device detonated at the center of the void swarm. It was not just a weapon. It was every emotion that 200 humans had felt since the beginning of the war. Fear and hope, grief and joy, rage and love, all of it concentrated into a single point and released at once. The void swarm exploded from within. The silent scream became a roar of agony that shattered windows across the fleet. The wall of darkness split apart, revealing the stars that had been hidden behind it. Light poured through gaps in the swarm's body. For one impossible moment, the night itself was burning. On the bridge of the Defiance, watched through tears, was gone. Hundreds of ships were gone, thousands of lives ended. But the void swarm was wounded, truly wounded. Great chunks of darkness were drifting away, dissolving into nothing. The main body was retreating, fleeing back toward the edge of the galaxy. They had not won, but they had not lost either. The long night was finally ending. The void swarm was running. It fled across the galactic rim, leaving behind fragments of itself that dissolved into nothing. For the first time in its ancient existence, it had tasted something worse than hunger. It had tasted fear, and it could not understand what had caused it. These small creatures, these brief, emotional beings who burned so brightly for such a short time, how had they hurt it? How had they done what no one else in 10,000 years had managed? The swarm did not know, but it remembered, and it was afraid. Behind it, the survivors of the coalition drifted among the wreckage of the battle. The threshold was littered with broken ships and floating debris. More than half the fleet had been destroyed. Thousands of beings from a dozen species had given their lives. But the galaxy was still alive. On the bridge of the Defiance stood alone. Her ship was barely functioning. Half the systems were offline. The hull had so many holes that entire sections had been sealed off, but they were still here. They had survived. She thought about his grin, his terrible jokes, the way he had trained alien volunteers to find their rage again. He was gone now, burned up in the heart of darkness so that others might live. Captain's voice was quiet. "We are being hailed. It is the Galactic Council." Almost laughed, "Put them through." Admiral appeared on the screen. His metallic face was the same as always, cold and emotionless, but something in his eyes had changed. "Captain Park," he said, "we have been monitoring the battle." "Have you? Did you enjoy watching from a safe distance?" Did not respond to the insult. "We calculated that your chance of success was less than 1%. We calculated that resistance against the void swarm was impossible." "Your calculations were wrong." Yes, the words seemed to cost him something. They were. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "We have spent millions of years perfecting our logic," finally continued. "We removed emotion from our decision-making. We believed that feeling was weakness and calculation was strength. We forgot that there are things that cannot be calculated." He bowed his head, a gesture of respect that had not shown to anyone in living memory. "We were wrong. You have shown us something we had forgotten, perhaps something we never truly understood. We wish to help if you will allow us." Felt tears on her cheeks. She had not expected this. After everything the Council had said, after they had called the Coalition traitors, after they had refused to help while billions died, she had not expected them to admit their mistake. "The void swarm is wounded but not destroyed," she said. "It will come back. When it does, we need to be ready. Then we will prepare together," straightened. "The resources of the Galactic Council are at your disposal, our technology, our ships, our people, all of it." "And your emotions?" asked. Paused. "That may take longer. We have suppressed our feelings for so long that many of us have forgotten how to feel. But your species has taught us that feeling is not weakness. It is the greatest strength of all. We will learn, Captain. We will remember." The transmission ended. Sat down in her captain's chair and finally let herself cry. Not from sadness, not from grief, from relief, from hope, from the overwhelming knowledge that they had done something impossible and the universe would never be the same. 1 year later, a memorial stood on Prime. The planet had been rebuilt. New cities rose from the ashes of the old. The light was returning, golden and warm, spreading across the surface like a sunrise after the longest night. The memorial was simple, a pillar of crystal and steel, etched with the names of everyone who had fallen at the threshold. Human names and alien names, side by side. Different species, different worlds, united in sacrifice. At the top of the pillar, one name burned, Sergeant Han. His letters were made of pure light, visible from orbit. The Had insisted on this honor. They said that as long as their civilization existed, his name would never go dark. Doctor led the first joint research initiative. Scientists from every species worked together to understand the void swarm. They discovered that it was not evil, not in any way that organic beings understood evil. It was simply a force of nature, like a hurricane or an earthquake. It consumed because consumption was its nature. But now they knew how to fight it. Human emotional resonance, combined with light technology and engineering, created weapons that could permanently damage the swarm. The next time it came, they would be ready. Lieutenant commanded the rebuilt Defiance. The new ship was 3 times the size of the original, with a crew drawn from 12 different species. He trained them the way had trained the volunteers, teaching them to find their passion, their rage, their love, teaching them to fight with their hearts as well as their weapons. The ghosts of Mars Colony 7 still visited him sometimes, but they did not accuse him anymore. They smiled at him. They were proud. And Captain Park stood before the reformed Galactic Council. The chamber was different now. The thrones had been removed. The representatives sat in a circle, equals rather than rulers. Humans had been given a permanent seat, not because they were the strongest or the oldest but because they had answered when no one else would. "The void swarm is still out there," said. "It is patient, it is eternal, it will come back." The representatives nodded. They knew this. They had accepted it. "But we are ready now. We have something we did not have before. We have hope. We have unity. We have the knowledge that even the greatest darkness can be fought if we fight together." She looked around the circle at the faces of beings she had once considered enemies. Dozens of others. They had all changed. They had all learned. "They have a new saying," continued. "It has spread across 10,000 worlds. When the darkness comes, do as the humans do. Stand up, hold hands, refuse to go quietly." She smiled. It was a real smile, warm and hopeful. "That is what we will do. That is what we will always do. The universe wept for heroes and we answered. We will answer again as many times as needed until the darkness finally learns that light cannot be destroyed. That hope cannot be killed. That humanity and everyone who stands with us will never surrender." The chamber erupted in applause. Not the polite, formal applause of politicians. Real applause, emotional applause, the sound of beings who had remembered how to feel. Outside the chamber, across the galaxy, the stars burned bright. Somewhere beyond the galactic rim, the void swarm waited. It was ancient, it was patient, it was hungry. But now, so was the galaxy's hope. And hope, humanity had taught them, was the most dangerous weapon of all. Engineer returned to Earth and planted her garden. She grew flowers from seeds collected on a dozen different worlds. Some of them should not have been able to grow in Earth's soil. They grew anyway. Life was stubborn like that. Every year on the anniversary of the Battle of the Threshold, she sat among her impossible flowers and remembered. She remembered grin, determination, wonder, quiet courage. She remembered what they had all fought for. And somewhere in the sky above, invisible to the naked eye, the Defiance II kept watch. Humanity's first answer to the universe's cry had become an eternal promise. We are here. We are watching. And if you call for help, we will come. Always.